I almost didn't stop that night. Looking back now, I really wish I hadn't. Because if I had just kept driving, none of what happened after would have happened. But when you're alone on a highway at 2 in the morning and you see someone standing on the side of the road waving for help, you don't really think twice about it. At least I didn't. It was early November when this happened. I was driving through northern Arizona after visiting a friend in Flagstaff. The plan was simple. Drive through the night, get home before morning, and sleep the whole day. The highway was almost completely empty. Just miles of dark road cutting through desert and forest. Every once in a while, another car would pass in the opposite direction, but most of the time it felt like I was the only person awake in the entire state. Yet around 1:45 a.m., I stopped at a small gas station outside a town called Williams. It was one of those lonely roadside stations with one pump island and a tiny convenience store. The place looked half abandoned. The fluorescent lights above the pumps flickered constantly, and the wind pushed dry leaves across the empty lot. Inside the store, there was only one employee, a tired-looking guy in his late 40s, sitting behind the counter watching something on a small TV. He barely looked up when I walked in. I grabbed a bottle of water and a bag of chips and brought them to the counter. While he scanned the items, he glanced outside toward the highway. Then he looked back at me. "Driving far tonight?" he asked. I nodded. "Phoenix." He hesitated for a second. Then he said something strange. "Yeah, try not to stop for anyone out there." I laughed a little. "Why?" He shrugged. "Just, people do weird things on that highway at night." The way he said it didn't feel like a joke, but I didn't think much about it. I paid for the snacks and headed back to my car. Within minutes, I was back on the road again. The highway stretched out ahead of me in a long, empty line. Dark mountains on both sides. No streetlights, no houses, just black wilderness. For about 30 minutes, everything was completely normal. Then I saw something up ahead. At first, it just looked like a shape near the edge of the road. But as I got closer, I realized it was a person. A woman. Standing on the shoulder of the highway, waving both arms, trying to get someone to stop. My first thought was that her car must have broken down. So her vehicle was parked a few feet behind her with the hazard lights flashing. For a moment, I remembered what the gas station clerk had said. Try not to stop for anyone. But the idea of leaving someone stranded out there in the middle of nowhere didn't feel right. So I slowed down and pulled over. The woman walked toward my car immediately. She looked to be in her mid-20s. Long dark hair, pale face, wearing a thin jacket that clearly wasn't warm enough for the cold desert air. She looked relieved when I rolled down the window. "Thank God," she said. "My car won't start." Her voice sounded shaky, like she had been standing out there for a long time. I glanced back at her car, a small white sedan with the hood closed. "Do you need a ride somewhere?" I asked. She nodded quickly. "There's a motel about 15 minutes from here. I just need to get there." I hesitated. Something about the situation felt a little strange, but nothing obviously dangerous, and leaving her out there didn't feel right. So I unlocked the passenger door. She climbed in quickly and shut it behind her. The moment she sat down, the temperature inside the car suddenly felt colder. I don't mean slightly colder, I mean the kind of cold that makes the back of your neck tighten. I tried to ignore it and pulled back onto the highway. For the first few minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she said something quietly. "Thank you for stopping," I nodded. "No problem." I glanced at her in the passenger seat. She was staring straight ahead at the road, completely still, her hands resting in her lap. Then I noticed something strange. She wasn't wearing any shoes, bare feet, covered in dirt. And that's when I realized something even stranger. Her car back there, the one with the flashing hazard lights, had no one else in it. No luggage, no bags, nothing. Just an empty car, sitting on the side of the road. And suddenly I remembered something the gas station clerk said that I hadn't thought about earlier. People do weird things on that highway at night. Then the woman beside me spoke again. But this time, her voice sounded completely different. Quiet, almost curious. "Do you know how far we are from the next town?" And when I turned to answer her, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. because the passenger door was still locked from the inside, and I never unlocked it for her. I know how crazy that sounds. I went over that moment in my head 100 times afterward, trying to come up with some simple explanation for it. Maybe I hit the unlock button without realizing it. Maybe I unlocked both doors automatically when I slowed down. Maybe I was just tired. But I remember that moment clearly, because when I noticed the lock still down on the passenger door, I felt this instant rush of panic that made my hands tighten around the steering wheel. I looked at her again. She was still facing forward, still perfectly calm, like nothing was wrong. I forced myself to speak normally. "I thought you said there was a motel 15 minutes away?" "There is," she said. Her voice had changed again. Still soft, but flatter now. Less human somehow. I swallowed and kept my eyes on the road. The highway ahead was empty. No headlights, no gas stations, no exits, just black desert stretching out on both sides. I told myself there had to be a rational explanation. There always is. Then I glanced at the rear view mirror, and my stomach dropped even harder. Her car was gone. Not just far behind us. Gone. The shoulder of the road behind me was completely empty, like no car had ever been there at all. I almost hit the brakes right then. Instead, I pressed harder on the gas. The woman finally turned her head and looked at me, and for the first time, I got a clear look at her face. She was pale in a way that didn't look natural. Not sick, not tired, just drained. Like all the warmth had been pulled out of her skin. Her eyes looked wrong too. Not glowing, not supernatural in some dramatic way. Just empty, more like she was looking through me instead of at me. "You're scared?" she said quietly. I gave a nervous laugh that didn't even sound real. "No, just tired." She kept staring at me for another few seconds. Then she looked forward again. "You should have kept driving." The way she said it sent this cold wave straight down my back. I didn't answer. My heart was pounding so hard at that point, I could hear it over the tires. I reached for my phone with one hand and checked the screen. No signal. Same as before at the gas station. I opened my maps anyway. The blue dot showing my location froze, then disappeared completely. That was when I noticed something else. The road signs had stopped. I had been on that highway long enough to know there should have been mile markers, turnoffs, something. But now there was nothing. No signs. No reflectors. Not even a shoulder line anymore. Just this long strip of dark road under my headlights. Like the highway had turned into something else without me noticing. I finally said the first thing that came to mind. "What's your name?" She didn't answer right away. For a few seconds, all I heard was the engine and the tires humming against the pavement. Then she said, "You already know." I turned and looked at her. "I don't." But she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring out her window into the darkness. At first, I thought she was looking at the desert. Then I realized she was looking at something moving out there. Shapes. On the side of the road. I squinted through the windshield. For a second, I thought they were fence posts. Then the headlights caught them more clearly. They were people, standing far apart along the shoulder, perfectly still, one after another, men, women, maybe even a child. All facing the road, all watching my car pass. I felt my mouth go dry. There had to be 6 or 7 of them. None of them moved. None of them reacted to the headlights. They just stood there in the dark like they'd been waiting for something. I pushed the gas pedal down harder. The speedometer climbed past 80, then 90. The woman beside me smiled faintly. "They don't like being left out there," I almost shouted at her. "What are you talking about?" She turned slowly toward me. "Most people don't stop." My hands were slick with sweat now. I looked ahead, praying for any sign of civilization. Then, finally, in the distance, I saw lights. A building. Small, isolated, sitting just off the road. My first thought was motel. My second thought was run. As I got closer, I saw a flickering neon sign in front of it. Vacancy. The motel looked old. 1 story, maybe 8 rooms total. Half the exterior lights were out. The parking lot was empty except for one rusted pickup truck near the office. I pulled in so fast the tires skidded on loose gravel. The moment the car stopped, I unlocked my door and threw it open. I was halfway out when I realized something strange. The passenger seat was empty. I turned so fast I slammed my shoulder into the door. She was gone. No sound of the door opening, no movement, no footsteps. Just gone. The passenger seat was empty, but the dirt from her bare feet was still on the floor mat. I stared at it for maybe 2 seconds before I ran toward the motel office. The neon vacancy sign buzzed overhead. Inside the office was dim and smelled like old carpet and cigarette smoke. A middle-aged man stood behind the counter flipping through a magazine. He looked up at me, annoyed at first, then concerned when he saw my face. "Hey, you okay?" I tried to speak, but I was breathing too hard. "There was a woman in my car," I said. "I picked her up on the highway and now she's gone." The man behind the counter didn't even blink. He just stared at me for a few seconds. Then he asked very quietly, "Was she barefoot?" Every hair on my arm stood up. "Yes." He looked toward the dark window behind me, then back at me. "You need to leave." I actually laughed because I thought I misheard him. "What?" "You need to get back in your car and go, right now." I stared at him. "I'm not going anywhere. I need a room. I need to call someone." He shook his head once. "You don't understand. If she came here with you, you can't stay." The air in the office suddenly felt colder. Then I heard it. 3 soft knocks on the glass front door behind me. Knock, knock, knock. I turned slowly. At first, I saw only my own reflection in the glass. Then, just beyond it in the darkness of the parking lot, I saw her, standing under the broken motel light, barefoot, still, watching me. And behind her, farther back near the edge of the road, the others were standing there too. For a few seconds, nobody moved. I was standing in the middle of the motel office, staring through the glass door. She stood under the flickering light in the parking lot, barefoot, still, watching me. And farther behind her, near the edge of the road, the others were there too. The same figures I had seen on the highway, men, women, standing far apart in the darkness, all facing the motel, all completely motionless. My chest felt tight. I turned slowly back toward the man behind the counter. His face had changed. Whatever annoyance he had before was gone. Now he just looked tired, like he'd seen this before. "You brought her here," he said quietly. "I didn't know," I whispered. He nodded once. "Most people don't." Another knock came from the glass door. Slower this time. Knock, knock, knock. I turned again. She hadn't moved. Still standing under that broken light. Still staring straight at me. But something about her face had changed. Her smile was gone. Now she looked patient. Like she knew how this was going to end. "Who is she?" I asked. The man behind the counter didn't answer right away. He walked slowly toward the back wall and opened a drawer beneath the desk. Then he pulled out an old newspaper clipping. He placed it on the counter between us. "Look." I stepped closer. The paper was yellow and wrinkled with age. The headline read, "Hitchhiker, Disappearances Continue on Route 180. Below, it was a small black and white photo. A young woman standing beside a car on the side of the road. Long dark hair, thin jacket, bare feet. My stomach dropped. It was her, exactly the same. Yet the article said the photo had been taken in 1997. I looked up slowly. "That's impossible." The man shook his head. "No. What's impossible is how long it's been happening." He leaned on the counter. "Every few years someone stops for her." My throat felt dry. "And then what?" The motel owner looked toward the door again. "She brings them here." My chest tightened. "Why here?" He gave a small, sad smile. "Because this is where the road ends." I frowned. "What are you talking about? I drove here, the highway." "There is no highway." His voice was calm, flat, like he'd explained this many times. "You passed it about 20 miles back." I stared at him. "That's not possible." He pointed toward the dark parking lot outside. Look. I stepped toward the window again. The woman was still there, but the others had moved. Not much, just closer. A few feet closer to the motel, standing in the darkness, watching, waiting. How many are there? I asked. The man sighed. Enough. Another knock, but this time it wasn't on the door. It was on the side window of the office. I turned. One of the figures was standing there now. A man, his face pale under the dim light, eyes empty, watching me through the glass. Then another shadow appeared behind him, and another, slowly surrounding the building. They can't come inside, the motel owner said, not unless you invite them. My heart started racing again. What happens if I leave? He looked at me carefully. That depends. On what? Whether she lets you? The neon vacancy sign outside flickered violently. The lights in the office dimmed for a second. Then came the loudest knock yet. Bang! The glass door shook. She was standing right outside it now, only a few inches away. Her face pressed close to the glass. And for the first time, her eyes looked alive. Not empty. Hungry. She tilted her head slightly. Then she spoke. Even through the glass, I could hear her clearly. You stopped for me. I didn't answer. You brought me here. Another slow smile appeared on her face. That means you stay. Behind her, the others moved closer to the door. The motel owner whispered from behind me. Don't open it. My hands were shaking. My mind was racing. Then something hit me. The dirt on my car floor. Her footprints. I turned slowly toward the door again and said the first thing that came to my mind. You were never in my car. Her smile disappeared instantly. You're lying. No, my voice sounded stronger now. You were standing on the road. I stopped, but you never got inside. Her eyes narrowed. Behind her, the other figures stopped moving. I stepped closer to the door. I drove here alone. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the motel lights flickered again. The woman's face slowly twisted into something angry, something unnatural. That's not how it works, I shrugged. Looks like tonight it does. For the first time since I arrived, she stepped backward. The figures behind her slowly faded back into the darkness. The motel owner exhaled quietly behind me. We stood there for a long time, watching the empty parking lot. Eventually, the neon sign stopped flickering. The wind picked up again, and the road outside looked normal. Just a road. Just desert. In nothing else. About 10 minutes later, I got back in my car. The motel owner stood outside watching me leave. I drove all the way back to the highway without stopping once. And when I finally reached a gas station near Phoenix, the first thing I checked was the passenger door. It was still locked, exactly the way I left it. But the dirt footprints on the floor mat were still there. And sometimes, late at night when I'm driving alone, I still catch myself checking the side of the road, just in case I see someone standing there, barefoot, waiting for someone to stop.